So we are talking about The Night Watchman, a 2016 movie, not to be confused with The Night WATCHMAN, which is also a 2016 movie, so that is not this one. However, this movie is directed by Miguel Angel Jimenez, and is actually a kind of majority of a Spanish production, although it is actually an English language movie. Now, the story here basically is a little bit of an odd one, because this has one of the most dramatic shifts in tone that I pretty much remember seeing in movie history, to be quite honest. This film is 90% a drama, and then the kind of the last 10% of the movie goes into full horror mode. It's weird. It's such a kind of like a dramatic shift in tone. It's very bizarre. But let me just kind of give you a little bit of context about what the story is here. So basically it follows this guy called Jack, and he is a guy who's had a troubled past. He's been in prison for the last 6 years or so. He comes back to this kind of small American town. Well, I guess it's going to be an American town. Where he's left his family. He's got his estranged wife, who has kind of resentment and abandonment issues, his son, who he barely knows, who is a deaf mute, and his brother, who is kind of has looked after his ex-wife and his child, and has become kind of the town minister, and is a little bit embarrassed about his wayward younger brother. You also have a kind of a smattering of other sort of characters that will come into frame here and there as well. Now the Night Watchman part comes in basically is he gets a job as a night watchman in a kind of an old abandoned mine, and that's pretty much where the title comes from. Now when he's actually staying overnight in this kind of mine, he hears some kind of strange things, finds some kind of rats sort of hung up hammock on the wall, things like that, and that's really the only thing you'll get, I say, throughout the movie until you kind of get to the last kind of 10% of this film. I'm not going to kind of go into too much about the actual horror side of bits, because it is really the climax of the film, so I can't really say too much about that, but I will just say it goes into full-on horror mode. And the interesting thing is that it actually ends in a somewhat realistic way, I would suppose, but it isn't particularly cinematic. The way the threat is dealt with seems a bit, that kind of lets the wind out the sails a little bit. It's not particularly climactic, but I guess when you think about it, it probably ended somewhat more realistically than you would think maybe these kind of films ended. Anyway, the main thing here, like I said, is the strange shift in tone. It's such a bizarre film, because when you're watching the majority of this film, it really just does play like a drama. Now, I've got to say, the acting here is pretty good. You do really feel the relationships kind of like, change, and kind of the way the people emote here is all very good. But I got to say, I was kind of a little bit like, this plot doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. It just seems to be this guy having kind of relationship issues with various people in his life, and that's pretty much it. That is pretty much the movie, 90% of it, until you get to the 10% at the end, and where it goes to full-on horror mode. So, although I have to say, the actual technical side of this, I think, is very good. I actually think the acting is good. I think the cinematography is good. When we do see kind of the horror sort of scenes, I think they're kind of quite well shot and quite brutal. And then the drama stuff is good in its own right. But the story flow of this film, the pacing of it, is so out of whack. I mean, you just don't know what you're watching, I think, and it's such a bizarre film, and it spends far too long, and it should have built up because when you do see this kind of the horrific thing, I feel like it comes out of nowhere a little bit. There is not enough setup in there. There's a smattering of kind of evidence throughout the rest of the film, but it's very minimal. So when we do see this kind of like this, this bit at the end, really, it feels like it comes out of nowhere. And on the flip side of that, the actual drama stuff seems to drag on forever. So although I feel this film succeeds on a lot of levels, as a story, I feel it kind of falls down quite badly. But I'll give this movie a slightly above average. I'll give it a 6 out of 10, because it is a competently made film, and it's well directed and well acted. But I feel like the script should have been rejiggled a little bit. Anyway, have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.